All right. I'd like to remind everyone here to please turn off your cell phone. And you folks on the podium, your cell phones should not be next to the microphones because they cause interference. Jarrell, right here, is going to be keeping time, and so we're going to give people varying amounts of times for the questions. I think they're 2 minutes for the questions. And Mike, you've got 3 or 4 right now, and we're sorry you're going to leave us.
What's the penalty if I go long?
It's a secret penalty to be announced later, but as I warned you, it will be painful.
And Mike needs a microphone.
I'm sorry? Yes. That's where it goes. And I'll be sitting on the side over there.
Am I up? Is it me?
You're up.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for hosting this forum, and I'm sorry I can't stay the whole time, but I appreciate the chance to speak briefly before I head to the planning commission. What's notable to me before coming here tonight is actually how many realtors are supporting me and endorsing me. And the main reason I hear is because I'm fair and I have experience. I hear that I'm approachable. I have a lot of realtors, I have a number of realtors that have gotten to know me very well, and they call me to talk about projects, to talk about things going on in the city, because I have the experience and I can guide them. So here tonight at this forum, one thing I know is everybody here really cares about the city. I've gotten to know them as we've done these forums, and they're all excellent people. So what's the difference? There's 2 spots open for 5 seats. And I'm asking for your vote and your support because I have the experience. I've put the time in with the city of Malibu. I've been a planning commissioner for about 6.5 years. I was a public works commissioner before that. So I have been through this process. I have been making decisions that affect all the issues that every one of us care about in the city for years. More than that, I have a track record that you can check out. Every decision I've made is public information. And I'm glad and would love to talk about anything and everything I've ever done with this. That's great that I've experienced, so what does it mean? The number one thing I hear in the city right now, the number one concern has to do with public safety. I hear that a lot, whether it's the highway, whether it's our neighborhood character, whether it's rehabs, whether it's short-term rentals, whether it's the MRCA. There's fear. People are scared about Malibu changing, their way of life changing, and I understand that. Every one of these fears, every one of these things that people are concerned about are items I've been dealing with for years. So this is not new to me. Why is that important? That's important because, as you may have noticed looking at the city council over the years, there's a time lag if you come from not having any experience onto the city council trying to figure out how it works. And I can attest to that. I've been a planning commissioner over 6 years. I learned something at every single meeting still. Land use issues are complicated, especially when it involves outside governmental entities, neighborhood issues. It's complicated. And it's not black and white. This group of people knows that the codes are very gray and subject to interpretation and reinterpretation. And that's where I have a lot of experience. And I want to bring that experience to the city council. A little bit more. I'm an environmentalist. So one of my main focuses is removing the poisons and toxins from our ecosystem. I'm concerned with plastics in the environment. I think Malibu should be more about clean and sustainable energy, conserving more water. And there's programs coming to the city that you're going to see very soon that do just this, and I support them all. I think we can do more with our public utilities, with power lines, which is a big issue right now. I think we can do more to get off the grid going forward too, and I look forward to talking about that, but I'm going to get some sort of painful penalty if I go on too long. And I know, 30 seconds left. I am being timed. This is awesome. And I know a lot about neighborhoods and development. And once again, my experience, my accountability, the fact that any one of you can, and some of you do, get a hold of me now, makes a difference. I am ready to step onto the city council right now and make change happen. I obviously would appreciate your support, but I'm open to you. My cell phone number, as I've said a few times, is listed on the city website. I left some pamphlets out there that have it on there too. You can call me anytime. I'd love to come meet with you because I know we're not getting to talk much tonight. I'd love to come meet your coworkers. I'd love to come to your house and meet your friends. I am open. I'm open and available. I appreciate your support, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Mikey. I'm going to hand this down.
Good luck, y'all.
Can you hand that down, please? Okay.
I think it comes down here.
We're going to begin now, and I'd like to remind everybody once again to turn off your phone ringers. Silence your phones, please. The questions are going to be asked in the order of seating, and it'll be 1, 2, 3, 4, and the next one will be 2, 3, 4, 1, and so on. If at any time somebody who's not you is talking, and you are not next, and you want to issue a rebuttal, you have 2 rebuttal cards to be used during the course of the thing. If you'll hold up one of the rebuttals cards, you can jump in and tell us why that person has just, insulted you, whatever horrible thing they did. And you guys have been so easygoing in the previous things, you probably won't use them at all. But you're only allowed to use each rebuttal card once during the day, so once during the evening. So, and you can do whatever you want, but if you try to use too many, we're in trouble. Okay? 2 minutes for each answer, and we have to conclude at 8:15. So we're going to give each of you at the end 2 minutes to wrap up. There's not going to be any questions from the audiences unless you guys only take 30 seconds per answer, and we've got extra time for us to fill with. But as it's scheduled, we're not going to be getting to that. Anybody disrupting the forum will be asked to leave. All comments will be civil or the clock will stop. You see, these are from more contentious elections. So I'd like to start out by introducing from this end. You've got Karen Farrer, followed by Jim Palmer, Lance Simmons, and Olivia Damavandi. And I'd like you guys to start making an opening statement of 2 minutes each. And I'm going to start with Karen and then go down the line. And then the first question will go to Jim.
Okay, thank you. How do I get my mic on? Sorry, Paul.
Is it just turn it towards you and start talking?
Is this on?
You bet.
Oh, great. All right. Thank you to the Malibu Association of Realtors and everybody who organized this, publicized it, brought questions. My name is Karen Farrer. I think most of you in the audience, since you're realtors, I see your pictures all the time. I feel like I see you all every day practically. I moved to Malibu 40 years ago. I moved in with my boyfriend. We're still hanging out. He's sitting back there, Cameron Farrer. We've been married for 35 years. We have 3 kids. We've raised them here in the local schools. I've lived in 3 parts of Malibu. I lived in a Quonset hut 2 miles up Rambla Pacifico for almost 10 years. I did. Moved out of there in '87. Bought a house on the land side of the highway in La Costa, right by the crosswalk. Lived there for 9.5 years. And 22 years ago, we built a house and moved to Point Dume. I've bought houses here. I've rented houses here. I've remodeled houses. I built a house from the ground up. I really appreciate what all of you do. I try to know as much as I can about it. I came to be involved with the city, first of all, with the school district. And if any of you know anything about me, you know that I've been involved in our local schools for the last 27 years. At the site level and at the district level, and now on a larger level, trying to separate our school district and get us out of what I would call a colonial relationship with Santa Monica. So I've been working on that for almost 10 years, and through that, I've worked with a lot of agencies. I've worked with the school district, with LACO, LA County Office of Education, with the Teachers Union, the Classified Employees Union, not to mention our principals and all of our neighbors. So I've hit the ground running. It's dealing with agencies, dealing with conflict, solving problems, doing research, and I plan to do the same thing with the city. So my rally cry is local control. The city has a lot of challenges with agencies like the MRCA, with the Coastal Commission,
time.
Excuse me, okay.
Very
I
good.
wanna get
Jim,
penalized.
that was very good.
Hello?
You'll be safe. Just start talking.
Hello? Okay. My name is Jim Palmer. Most of you do know me. I've lived in Malibu over 50 years. I've surfed every wave in Malibu. I've raised my son here in Malibu, Johnny Palmer, here sitting in the audience, has gone to Juan Cabrillo, Malibu Middle School, Malibu High School. He played on the Malibu High School football team with great memories of all of these times. Currently, I serve as chair of the Malibu Public Works Commission. I've had this experience of running with the city government, with the staff, and also working with the public. During the last election, I was asked to serve by Mayor Mullen, who I have just received his endorsement, which I'm very happy about. Working with the Public Works Department, working with the public, and working with the City Council has given me the experience that I know is needed on the City Council. So for that, I know that it's my time to run. I've been asked by the council members to run, so I'm taking this opportunity to serve our community. I want to be able to strengthen the relationship between the city and our residents. I think that sometimes the residents' complaints are that the city is not paying attention to their needs. So if I am elected to the city council, that's the first thing I'm going to do, is strengthen our community and develop close relationships with the city of Malibu and our community. Thank you.
Great. Lance?
Oh, no, hold your applause until after I speak. Thank you. Hi, my name is Lance Simmons. Many of you probably do not know me. I have been in Malibu for 100 years, and I'm in remarkable good shape for my age. I actually have been in Malibu 3 years. After a 40-year career, which had me doing public policy, political and governmental work for federal government, state government, local governments. And the thing that I bring to this election is going to be far different than what all the other candidates bring. And that is a wealth of experience, integrity, and putting principles above politics. Because all my experience has taught me that we have gotten to a place, and I'm an author, I've written 2 books on public policy, and this is what I see happening right now. There's been a tremendous loss of confidence and faith in our leaders and our institutions. And that's taking place at all levels of government, all across the spectrum. And there's a genuine feeling of anxiety in the public at large that government, writ large, no matter what it is not paying attention to them. So what I would like to do is bring the skill sets that I've developed over a 40-year career to try to make my community, because this is my community now, just like it's your community, to try to make it the best that it can be, and to take those problem-solving skills and put them to good use on the City Council. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lance. Olivia?
Is this the first forum we don't have to stand up?
You can if you want.
Well, hi everybody, I'm Olivia. It's so nice to be here. Thank you all for coming. You may or may not know me as a longtime Malibu Times journalist and assistant editor. Covering city government at City Hall was the bulk of what I did. I attended every planning commission meeting and have kept up ever since. I've seen planning commissions come and go. I've seen what works, what doesn't work. But most of all, and I'm not going to get into my background, I'm raising 3 kids here. It's always been my dream to raise my family in Malibu. I see a lot of things that are changing that are making me kind of reconsider. And I think central to this election and what I'd love to speak with you about today is how each of these crucial issues in this election affect property values, they affect quality of life, they affect all of our assets. And so each one of these, whether it's public safety, whether it's FEMA, whether it's the MRCA, they all affect what happens to our property values. There are specific issues in which I look forward to speaking of today within the city that I think is the root cause of a lot of turmoil that we see between the Planning Commission and the staff, between the City Council and the Planning Commission. So, like I said, I know you can all read about my background online. I wanted to spend this time really reassuring you of my experience and that I've got all the skin in the world in this game. I'm raising my family here, and my goal and everything is to do right by Malibu residents. And when certain issues divide us, like development, it's important to act in the best interest of everybody. So I look forward to telling you my strategies and my thoughts and how I will protect you all. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Okay, we're starting with Jim Palmer. Thanks to the tenacious efforts of the City Council, specifically Lou Lamont, the City of Malibu was just successful in getting a new state law signed regarding the operation of rehab facilities. Are you familiar with this, and are there further amendments to this law that we would like to added, or could local ordinances further assist?
Yes. First of all, thank you, Councilmember Lamont, for shepherding this through, and the governor signed this bill, which enforces regulations of the rehab facilities that we have in Malibu. There is probably one area that I would think that we still need to try to work on, which is the clustering element of this. But right now, this is a big step in making sure that the rehabs that are existing currently are being run at a high medical enforcement level, that the operations are all very much approved by the government. So I do think that we can do a little better, but we've made a huge step in the right direction, eliminating rehabs that are operating without the proper permits. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Lance, would you like me to repeat the question? Or
No,
you...
that's okay. Thanks, Paul. I too want to congratulate Lou Lamont. This is an extraordinary thing that you've done. And what you've done essentially is the role of intergovernmental affairs. And you've brought the city and the state together to solve a problem. That is what I have spent the bulk of my life doing, problem solving in intergovernmental affairs. There are times when we get all twisted around the axle on any number of issues because there's a lack of communication between the state government and local governments, and sometimes even federal government. So to the extent that we want to pick up off of what Lou has done and continue to exploit that on issues which go across the spectrum, but when it comes time to pick up and go to Sacramento, we've got to do it. And you've got to know what the committees are, who the players are, and you've got to utilize our state reps and our state senators to help us deal with issues that affect them as much as it does us. So, Lou, thanks again. You and I have had this discussion before over the years on the involvement of the National League of Cities, the California League of Cities. I know these organizations very well. These are the types of partnerships and relationships which we need to utilize to fashion the best public policy for all the citizens of our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Lance. Olivia?
I'm very, very proud to be endorsed by Mr. Lamont, Mayor Lamont. He's been a mentor of mine for a long time, and what I've learned from him is that if you really believe in something and you work hard and you do everything legally, that you can achieve it. The same theme that's happening with our rehab and sober living issues, and I know sober living are still an issue that we're trying to regulate. The same lessons can be applied to neighborhoods that are trying to be turned into public hiking trails by the MRCA. The same lessons apply to FEMA, who are trying to rezone their flood maps. And the lesson really is that we can take control of our neighborhoods and our property rights. We can. It takes a lot of hard work. It takes a lot of grit, to put it nicely. But we can do this. And the same lesson that Lou has shown us and taught us in standing up for our neighborhoods, banding together to pass legislation that will take care of these issues so that we don't, as neighborhoods, have to band together and knock down the door on City Hall to be heard. We can all relax because there's a law that takes care of it. I'd like to solve issues by sending other messages. For example, the issue of planning that's very confusing right now. And I think he's done a great job at clarifying what is allowed, what isn't, and most importantly, he did it legally and in a way that's actually is bulletproof. So thank you, Lou. We all really appreciate that.
Thank you. Next time, take the mic with you, I think. Yes.
All
You
right.
ready, Karen?
Sure. All right. I too would like to thank Lou. He spent the last 8 years getting this bill through, and it just passed last week. It's a huge accomplishment, but one thing it took was stamina. This is not something for the faint of heart, and I know that type of struggle. It's something I've been involved in as well. As Olivia said, there's another battle on the horizon, and those are sober living houses. Right now, there are no regulations on sober living houses. Those are also for-profit businesses in neighborhoods. They're going on right now. That's a protected class by the Americans with Disabilities Act. So that's a tough battle. There are no regulations. So as much as we can thank Lou, congratulate him, and we've taken some of the teeth out of our rehabs in our neighborhoods, we have another battle. And so here we're going one more time with the same type of situation. That's the kind of thing that I've done. It's the kind of thing I look forward to. I've lived here for 40 years. I don't plan on going anywhere. I don't want my neighborhood turned into a commercial zone. I don't want the disruption. And quite frankly, I'm very disappointed at the success rate of most of those businesses. So I don't see any justification for it. I look forward to that fight.
Thank you. Hey, Lance, you get to be first on this one. The Malibu City Council has continued the issue of short-term rentals. The California Coastal Commission has threatened to sue Malibu if it imposes a total ban. What will you do when the matter of short-term rentals comes up for a vote at the council level?
Well, I sat through that 6+ hour marathon the other night in City Council, and I must tell you, at the end of the night, at the end of the day, I was absolutely flabbergasted at the fact that after we had spent all this time commenting on a proposal which was being presented by city staff, there arose discussion of whether or not we could even do the proposal in the first place. Something's backwards here. What you're supposed to do, and I've worked with general counsels my entire life. I've worked in the White House. We always turn to our general counsel. I've worked in governor's offices. We always turn to our general counsel. I worked for the United States Senate. We always turn to our general counsel for direction on solving problems. So where can we go with this? What's the process? How can we best start going about solving this problem? What we did the other night was we talked about how to solve the problem without getting any sort of firm commitment or understanding or miscommunication, whatever it was, on what the potential process could be. Personally, I think that there is if you looked at the spectrum on this issue, you'd have people who want to ban on one end short-term rentals, and people who would like to see no regulation whatsoever. I'll come down somewhere in between. I think we've got to have accountability, and we've got to have enforcement in whatever actions we take. I think that there are two sides here which need to be factored into the equation. One is that there are people who actually can make a case that they need the income. That ought to be taken into consideration. But there are neighbors who also have to be taken care of as well. So we
Thank
can
you.
come to some agreement in the middle. Thank you.
Thank you. Olivia?
I would very, very strictly regulate Airbnbs. I think the answer and the secret to the success of an ordinance like this, is to hold property owners accountable for the tenant's behavior. So we don't just have a blanket approach ban, but what we do is we make it so property owners or property managers have to live in very close proximity to the project. They have to be available to answer one call. If they don't, within a 1 hour or 2 hour time limit, the cops are called and the facility is shut down immediately. If they have another violation, that the property owner is no longer allowed to provide short-term rentals. This will take care of, I believe, everybody who is causing problems. I believe that, by and large, those who are doing it right, who don't want to degrade their neighborhoods, shouldn't be penalized. But those who are not doing it right should. So I think this ordinance will take care of exactly that.
Thank you, Olivia. Karen?
Okay, I've been doing a lot of research on this. I've looked into Del Mar, Carmel, Hermosa Beach, Manhattan Beach. And they've all approached it a little bit differently. And as Paul said, the Coastal Commission is all about access. An outright ban doesn't look likely here. Hermosa Beach's ban is for residential areas. It's not for commercial areas. They do have it in commercial areas. And that city has not yet adopted a local coastal plan, which I found interesting. So here, what we do have, as we all know, are some problem owners. We also know we have problem dog owners. And Malibu Road, I recognize, has probably been the single most impacted neighborhood. I support regulation. I support enforcement. I would support rescinding the license of somebody who's a habitual offender. And what is habitual? That might be 2 times. I do know people who depend on the income. I know people who depend on the income whose neighbors don't realize that they're even doing short-term rental and have done it for years. And I wouldn't want to see that taken away from them. We have some good neighbors that are doing it. We've got some bad operators. We need to weed those out, enforce the law, and protect our neighborhoods. We do want to protect. I personally want my neighborhood protected and my quality of life preserved. So I don't see a ban in the cards for us. It just doesn't seem possible with the Coastal Commission. That's my policy on it.
Thank you. Jim?
Yes. I have a much stronger position on short-term rentals. Personally, I think short-term rentals should be limited to owner-occupied residences. I do not believe that an investor can come into a residential neighborhood and run a business by renting it out for short-term income. One of the other bigger problems that has occurred is we have over 500 short-term rental properties currently on the market, which has basically taken long-term rental properties off the market. We see a result happening where families are no longer able to live here because the properties that they would be renting have been now moved into the short-term rental category. By eliminating families to come into our neighborhoods, the children are not going to be able to attend our schools, and one of the most alarming statistics is that the decrease of our high schools as a direct result of this. So I am not for short-term rentals at all. I only believe that owner-occupied residents should be allowed to have a permit for a short-term rental. Anybody that wants to rent out their property, whether they're the primary resident or if they are an investor for 30 days or more, I have no problem with that. Thank you.
Okay, we have our first use of a rebuttal card. Karen, you're on.
It's a brief rebuttal, and while I won't disagree with Jim entirely about houses being taken off the market for families, 2 things happened in 2013 in the Malibu schools that did not happen in Santa Monica. PCBs were discovered on campus, and the district instituted something called district-wide fundraising, which means pooled fundraising. Between those 2 things, we had a lot of parents get very discouraged, coupled with the fact that Malibu High was built in 1966 and has not been improved. It's in the process of being improved now thanks to the bonds that have been passed. But I do want to say our enrollment at Malibu Middle and High School has gone down 23% in the last 5 years. I believe more to those two factors than to short-term rental. Santa Monica High hasn't gone down, and we need to build that back up. Now that our schools are being rebuilt and reorganized, I think that's going to happen.
Thank you. Okay, Olivia, I believe you're next. Many homeowners, architects, and affiliated professionals in the industry are frustrated by difficulty in getting a permit to build or remodel a home in Malibu. There's an impression that the established rules and formulas regarding building are simply a framework for the Planning Commission and City Council to modify as they wish. Even no variance plans end up being appealed. Do you have any knowledge of formulas or how this process could be improved?
I do, and I'm so glad you asked. Okay, there are two major issues. Do I really only have 2 minutes?
Yeah, get started.
There are two main issues. One is the price and the time it takes to get a permit. The second one is the inconsistent application of the law, and that everyone's not being treated fairly under the law. One of the problems is because it's so expensive and time-consuming to get a permit, you've got more unpermitted development because people are incentivized to not want to wait to get their permits or pay for them. You're creating an environment where only super wealthy people can build in Malibu and can build a home and afford to go through the process, especially when it takes such a long time. Developers are now maxing out square footage for profit. They need to recover the costs of whatever they've spent to get their permits and how long it's taken to build. So that's why a lot of the times you see boxes on, you see lots with boxes that take up the whole lot of land. And the other thing is a lot of people try to pass off, as you know, their projects as remodels. They're trying to prove that they have, more than 50%, that they're not removing more than 50%. And so, that's one way they can save costs and save time. There's a huge uncertainty of what's allowed in Malibu. If you're a resident and somebody wants to build a home in your neighborhood, you freak out because you say, oh, I see the story poles go up. I have to go to the city. Where's my notice? I didn't get my notice. What are they going to do? They're going to block this. They're going to block that. And if you're a builder, you're saying, gosh, I hope in my neighborhood people, are welcoming of new people and maybe they don't want new homes built in their neighborhood. And gosh, I hope nobody knows anybody on the Planning Commission or the City Council because maybe my property rights won't be upheld. So we need to institute laws that are fair for everybody and that calms down this anxiety and this fight of who's going to represent who better.
Thank you. Karen?
I was at the Planning Commission meeting a week or two ago where a project with no variances was A, before the Planning Commission, and B, was sent back to the city. So I think some of you were in the room and saw that as well. I found that discouraging. So I will say, I understand the concept of neighborhood character, but it's subjective. So if the city wants to quantify neighborhood character more than it has now, I'd like to see that happen. We don't need people getting $250,000 or $300,000 into a project with 2 or 3 years going by before a shovel has hit the ground. Mm-hmm. You've all seen that. And we are going to get to the point, as Olivia said, where only billionaires will attempt to build here. That's not going to help us. Okay, we need a cross-section of families here in the city, the way that we've all seen. Like I said, I lived here in a Quonset hut, and our combined income was, I don't know what it was, $500 a year or something. We were literally starving students. The planning department hours have been cut. If I get elected, I'm going to work to get them back to where they were. That's not helping us. That's going backward. If a reduced Florida area ratio is incentivized with a builder, they might want to consider that. If it's not, I don't see why someone proposing to build a home with no variances is A, put before the Planning Commission, and B, sent back to the city, especially when they've worked on something for 2 years.
Thank you. Jim?
Yes. The application process for any of these permits is long, exhausting, and a lot of times disconnected between the different agencies. I know that people have come to me and said that they've gone to the counter, they've told them that this is what they needed to do, they accomplished that, they come back, they said, now we need you to do this, and they've done this over and over and over again over a period of years. So I think it would be in everyone's best interest if the Planning Commission could work closer with the public and informing them exactly what they're up against. Give them, if you see a card that has to be signed off before you get your conditional use permit, it goes on and on and on. I mean, you have to have 20 or 30 checks before they will issue your conditional use permit or any permits. So we need a good communication between applicants or the Malibu residents and the Planning Commission to guide them and help them down this path instead of throwing up obstacles along the way. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Lance?
It's always important to be aware of what the process is, obviously. So better communication is always called for, so individuals know just exactly what it is they're getting into, and have a clear roadmap to how to get to the end. But the city council has a responsibility to make absolutely sure that the process is fair and that the process is followed. And if the process is flawed, then you should have the ability on city council to make the adjustments and the changes to bring the process into conformance with either reality or common sense. The process is always going to be more determinative of whether you have a good quality of life and a good solid set of proposals than ultimately the product. So I would really push on city council to make absolutely sure if there is an enormous amount of backlash against the process, then they ought to step forward and make sure that amendments to or changes in the process take place.
Thank you. Okay, our next question, which goes to you, Karen, is you might have heard that Los Angeles County just voted to approve rent control in the unincorporated areas of the county, which affects parts of Malibu, who won't be voting for you. Are you for or against rent control?
Well, I know that here we have rent stabilization, and I will say I've been endorsed by the Paradise Cove Homeowners Association, and they know that I will protect them if that comes up. Rent control, I have 2 kids in their 30s. One's a renter, one's an owner. And I will say without rent control, they've got problems, my son at least. But what I don't believe in is I don't believe that an owner of a building should have to collect an increase in rent for the transfer of title within the family. If a parent is passing something on to their child, I don't think that increase should take place. So we don't have it here in the city. I do believe that the rent stabilization is a good requirement for both mobile home parks. Rent control, yeah, I do support it, Paul.
Okay. Thank you. Jim?
Yes, I do believe that rent control or rent stabilization is a good thing. It helps preserve our community, our neighborhoods. It allows people to stay in their homes and be part of our community, as opposed to rent increases, which sometimes people can't afford, which has them making changes in their life and moving and creating a disruption in our neighborhood. So I do support a rent control or rent stabilization to provide stability within our communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Lance?
I think diversity is an incredibly important weapon to advance any society. And I would be philosophically predisposed to support greater diversity and rent control, period.
Thank you.
And
You're
what
on,
I will
Olivia.
add is I do support rent control. I think that I don't know what your question was in
May
regards to
I-
LA
let-
County.
May I read you may have heard Los Angeles County just voted to approve rent control in the unincorporated areas of the county, which affects parts of Malibu, which can't vote for you.
Right.
Are you for or against rent control?
I'm for it, but I think that it's important to support longtime residents who have lived here forever, who are an integral part of the community. Many of them have come to me and said, "Why can't we make Paradise Cove, the mobile home park, or Point Doom Club? Why can't those count toward affordable housing in Malibu?" I know we're under siege by a lot of different organizations and agencies that have accused us of being obviously NIMBY, elitist, and I'd like to see rent control in our community to try and combat that stereotype, and I think those are two great areas in which to do that.
Thank you. Jim, we're starting over now. Malibu City staff and council just achieved the notable accomplishment of acquiring almost 30 acres of commercially zoned land with a large parcel on Point Doom. A publication reported that $7.3 million of that financing package would come from the city and Los Angeles County allocations of dollars from Transportation Ballot Measures R&M. What do you think that ultimately means for the city, and how would you determine how the land is utilized?
First, I want to congratulate the council and everyone involved in this, because this is huge. For the Malibu City to acquire commercial real estate and dedicate it to uses for the public is fantastic. So I wholeheartedly support this. I think we need, obviously, public support. We need to have public forums. We need to get the community's input as to the best uses for this property. Some of the ideas that have been proposed to me is a library up on the Heathercliff property. It would be sounds like a good idea to me. The transportation funds that we received have to be used, the way I understand it, for parking and other commercial services or visitor serving services. That money can be used to divide the parking into a very well-planned, organized fashion so that we're not clustering parking lots in any of these properties. I think this can be done with, again, community input, very important strategic planning. And another thing that I want to say is that with this acquired land, we now have the opportunity to put together cultural institutes for our community and also for our children to provide cultural services. And I think it might be a good idea to reach out to some of the more affluent members of our community to help in funding something such as the Aspen Institute, where we can bring world-class minds together to solve problems. Thank you.
Thank you. Lance?
I believe we have an excellent opportunity here to make some critical decisions going forward. And I once again, I also want to congratulate the city for purchasing these properties. I think they're going to help us go a long way to making some good decisions about the future of our community. I think that we ought to use some of the land for recreational facilities, and in particular, the long-awaited, the long-promised, the long-planned for skate park. I think we ought to protect the bluffs from having either recreational facilities or other development. One of the planks of my platform is to reduce traffic congestion on PCH. And I believe that we ought to use some of these properties to reduce parking on PCH, particularly on the weekends in the summer, and institute a shuttle service to get people to the beach. I think it's one of the most serious things that we need to confront. As an avid cyclist who pedals down PCH every single day, I live on PCH. I think that we can put in bike lanes, but the key is parking. And these properties ought to be used for it, and I think that would be in pretty prime keeping with the fact that there's money involved from LA Metro. Thank you.
Thank you, Lance. Olivia?
Okay. So I think it's so important to be creative with what we decide to implement on each parcel of land. For example, I think parking lots should be minimized however possible, and by that I mean put underground so that we can utilize the land for more resident-serving amenities. On the Aoki property, for example, which is the current chili cook-off site, what I'd love to do is take Fire Station 88, and this is an example of how we can utilize the parking. There's a slope at the end of the property that goes up, and I spoke to a few land use consultants and engineers, and I said, what if we, underneath that slope, grade it a little bit so that we could have underground parking for a couple hundred cars. On top of that, we can put Fire Station 88, whose lease is practically expired. So what does that do? We combine public safety with income for the city and recreational amenities for our community. So I really advocate getting creative and bringing in the best and the brightest to figure out exactly how we can fit all of these amenities and all of these advantages onto our land, such as, like I listed, public safety, recreation, and some kind of income for the city. I'd love to see a cultural arts center and a movie theater at the land on Heathercliff. I think the density of the population in Point Dume can sustain a movie theater. I think it's easy for people to walk from that neighborhood to this land. Obviously, at the end of the day, though, everything is up to you guys. It's up to the residents. It's up to the voters, the taxpayers. And I'm certainly open to any ideas, and it's my responsibility to carry out your wishes, not the city council. Thank you.
Thank you, Olivia. Karen?
Okay, so there were two very, very long threads on social media, one on Nextdoor and one on Facebook, and they each started with a comment that had not all the facts. So, big surprise, they unleashed a torrent of vitriol. I did read I read the Nextdoor thread on a Sunday morning last weekend. Those Metro funds need to be used for parking, or the money needs to be given back. So I don't think anybody wants to do that. I believe that the parking requirements will be satisfied with whatever facilities and resident-serving amenities go on those properties. I have my own personal vision for how they could be used. That's not the most important thing. The most important thing is a huge amount of community input. Remember, government belongs to those who show up. That's why you're all here tonight. So we do need to have town hall meetings. We need to have an online survey, a hard copy survey. Yes, we would love to have a skate park, many of us. And as I've told people, for my son, it was not only where he spent a lot of time, it was his first job. He took the bus from Point Dume down to Papa Jack's for 3 summers. So yeah, I haven't forgotten that. You know, we heard talk about a lot of things, a performing arts center, a community pool, some more ball fields. Those are all on the table, and if anybody has other ideas, please, by all means, bring them. But I'm not, I don't see a standalone parking structure, which was the comment that I read on social media, which got a whole lot of people very upset. I believe that the parking will be incorporated into whatever local resident-serving amenities those properties end up with.
Thank you. I believe Lance is next. With parking at the Malibu Pier spilling out into traffic lanes every sunny day, the overuse of Paradise Cove creating unsafe road conditions in that area as parking and pedestrian craziness ensues, and the Westward Beach traffic confusion, all resulting in overall dangerous driving on PCH, how would you promote a more sensible attitude and safer conditions for residents and visitors in Malibu?
Well, as I just mentioned, I spend every single day bicycling on PCH. And I can tell you the things that I see and make your hair stand on end. Particularly in the summertime when I see cars stacked up down in Paradise Cove on the side of the road. and I'm coming down on a bicycle. Now I'm all for single lane bicycles, okay? I'm not for these, Pelotons with, 4 deep, 4 across. But when I go down there, I'm constantly measuring how close I am to the vehicles, which are doing considerably faster than 45 to my left, and the possibility of opening doors on the right. It's pretty scary. So what I have proposed is we should figure out a way to get people to the and then you see the women with their small children and the bag over the shoulder and the boogie board under the arm, and they're scooting across PCH. This is absolutely unbelievable. We need to provide incentives for folks to park off-site, hop on a bus, hop on some sort of a shuttle system, and get them to the beach. We can put down bike lanes. People say, oh, well, some places on PCH it gets too thin. I don't care if the bike lane's that big. I understand you can't move the mountain, you can't move the ocean. But probably about 75 to 80%, you can definitely put in a good-sized bike lane. When I'm riding in a bike lane, I'm going to stay between the 2 lines. And I think most drivers, not all, but most drivers are going to stay within their line. So to keep the bikes away from the cars away from the bikes. But we got to figure out another way to get people to the beach, particularly in the summertime. And we can have parking on PCH for residents. We can have a placard system. Thank you.
Thank you. Olivia.
One of my main goals, if elected, is to increase our law enforcement in Malibu, especially along PCH. I love our volunteers on patrol. I think they're wonderful and they do a great job. They bring in a lot of income with ticket writing. But nobody's going to replace law enforcement. Nobody's going to replace our police. I will reprioritize our budget to make sure that we can afford additional law enforcement. I know there are a lot of people that say that's impossible, but you know what? I thought regulating rehabs was impossible too. Lou proved us wrong. We need more law enforcement on our highways. And no offense to Lance, they need to also police bikers, bicyclists who are engaging in reckless behavior. I cannot tell you how often it happens. It might be taboo to say, but they need to follow the same laws we do, whether it's stop signs, red lights. I don't know about all of you, but since the beginning of time, and it's only gotten worse, my day revolves around what time I can get out of Malibu through that Topanga light and get into Santa Monica or wherever else I need to go. We need to time the lights accordingly. We need to work very closely with Caltrans to bring up all of our lights to state-of-the-art technology so that they change according to the flow of traffic. One of the other things that I really would like to do is launch a very inexpensive, distracted driving campaign. We are a town of, they say 13,000 residents, but really it's full-time, 6,500 full-time residents. We are inundated by 15 million residents a year, 15 million visitors a year. And many of those people have never driven on PCH before and don't know that it's actually a death trap. So how do we educate them before they get in, before they come to Malibu? Well, we need to utilize social media. We need to utilize technology that's inexpensive and effective to reach millions of people so that they know this problem exists in the first place. I have a lot of great ideas. I know I'm running out of time, but I'd love to chat with each of you about how we make this happen.
Lance, I believe I saw a rebuttal card. Would you like to defend the honor of cyclists everywhere?
Actually, there's nothing to defend against. I am not opposed to policing or enforcing bicycles. In fact, the whole idea of a bicycle lane is to keep you in it. And if you're not in it, you ought to get a ticket. I don't have a problem with that. In fact, the whole idea of having the lanes in the first place is to keep you away from getting into trouble. So I don't want my position to be misconstrued as the thinking that putting down bike lanes give bikers free rein to do whatever they want. Quite the opposite. It's meant to restrict them to places where they don't come in contact with automobiles and vice versa.
That's a rebuttal to the rebuttal I see from Olivia.
I wish it were that easy. When I was working as a spokeswoman for the city of Malibu, one of the things that I dealt with day in, day out was What about bicyclists? Why can't we have bike lanes? Why can't we improve safety on PCH? And I wish it were that easy. The answer is there's no room. And I think the city has implemented bike lanes where they're available on, the west end of Malibu, along Zuma Beach and beyond. We have bike lanes. I'm sure the city of Malibu would like nothing more, or Caltrans would like nothing more than to, organize our bicyclists and keep them separate from our drivers. But there's no room. A lot of these beach homes you see were built way before Malibu became a city. And so how do you create room where there is none? You've got public easements. You've got people going in and out. It's a very complicated issue, and I want nothing more than to improve the safety of PCH for everybody here, for demographics, all over the map, for kids who are learning to drive, for people who have been here for the first time. I think it's our #1 priority.
Thank you. Karen, shall I remind you of what the question actually is? With parking at the Malibu Pier spilling out into traffic lanes every sunny day, the overuse of Paradise Cove creating unsafe road parking and pedestrian situations, and Westward Beach traffic confusion, all resulting in overall dangerous driving on PCH, how would you promote a more sensible attitude and safer conditions for residents and visitors in Malibu?
Okay. For me, for probably most people, the #1 thing here is safety. The highway is not safe, and it's getting worse. And that's what we all have been hearing at pretty much every single forum. Our sheriff's line item in the budget is the single largest line item. It's approximately $8 million. I would be in favor of increasing it. If I were to be elected, I'd like to see more sheriffs on the highway, more sheriffs on our canyons. We all know people who've died, okay? It's a fact of life here. We do have people unfamiliar with the roads. We've got people speeding, distracted, looking for a place to park, making a U-turn. You name it, we've all seen all of it. The other resource that we have right now that at the moment we're not able to use are the VOPs, the Volunteers on Patrol. This is a group of 15 people in Malibu right now, and anybody else is welcome to join. They're trained by the Sheriff's Department. They have to commit to, I think it's something like 16 hours a month. You know some of them, Mark Russo, Jerry Churchill, Guy Blake, Connor Blake. They give up their free time to help us. What they also do is they free up the sheriffs. When there's an accident, they can clear the road. The sheriffs can get back to the work that only they can do. We had 3 VOP cars. They're about $30,000 each. Then we went down to 2 cars. I'm not sure why that 1 car was taken out of circulation. Both cars now that we had are also off the road. One, I understand, for a dashboard light that came on, and the other one, some other repair. They've been off the road for several weeks now. I would like to know why that is. They're generating $700,000 in parking tickets. They're able to write tickets everywhere except on Pacific Coast Highway. That's a win-win-win. Dedicated people who live here, who are volunteering their time, they're trained by the sheriff, and they're generating revenue. So let's get the VOPs back out.
Thank you, Karen. Jim?
Thank you, Paul. This is a big problem, traffic on Pacific Coast Highway, especially down by the pier, down by Malibu, and other dangerous areas like Paradise Cove. One thing that can be done is to enforce current laws. Some of these businesses are operating outside of their conditional use permits. So I think the first thing the city could do to try to help solve some of the problem would just be enforce the current rules that we currently have on the books. That would be a start. The sheriffs are contracted by the city, and I agree that we need to enforce our traffic presence. The sheriffs divide themselves up into the traffic control and into the criminal investigations. At night, we have 2 sheriffs. One is for traffic and one is for criminal. I think that's not enough at night for Malibu. So I would definitely suggest we increase the sheriff's presence, especially at night. The volunteers on patrol, these people are fantastic. They're all volunteers. They're here to help mitigate some of the problems that the sheriffs have. We had 3 vehicles which were out of service for a period of time. And last Wednesday's city council meeting, the city safety commissioner, Chris Frost, mentioned this. And now I'm happy to say that those 3 cars are now back operating and they're on the roads. So this is good, but the city needs to be more involved in helping solve this problem. Thank you.
Okay. Olivia, continuing to beat a dead horse, we're hearing complaints that the sheriffs are not enforcing traffic laws, and specifically the rules regarding overnight parking of recreational vehicles along PCH. What will you do, or what can you do to improve this situation?
So one was the parking of illegal vehicles on PCH overnight.
Right.
And the other?
And the other is general, we're asking you to think the last time you saw somebody getting a ticket other than by the guy who's sitting there with the radar gun.
Again, it really comes down to increasing law enforcement. It does. There are too many places to be at once. Our law enforcement, I think, does an incredible job between disruptions because of homelessness in our shopping centers or in homes that are being built, to different issues of highway safety. If we have more boots on the ground, we can handle more issues at once. And not let those really important ones that really do affect quality of life slip through the cracks. The last time, yeah, I mean, you're right. You see people getting tickets in the same areas, the same speed traps, and having increasing our law enforcement will even that out. It'll even that out. It'll make people, it'll keep people on their toes, especially ones who are distracted, who are driving recklessly, and who haven't been on our highway before. So. My answer is increasing law enforcement will eradicate a lot of these issues or greatly ameliorate them.
Thank you. Karen?
Well, I'll say that again. I also agree with increasing law enforcement. Right now, we also have a delayed response time from Lost Hills, which, as you know, is at Canaan and the 101. Must have been a week ago now. We broke ground right at the Civic Center in the colonnaded area where the sheriff's station used to be, on a Santa Monica College, I can't call it campus, but building. It's a 7-room building. For those of you who don't know, Malibu is part of the Santa Monica College District. We pay into that as taxpayers. We're finally getting a building here to serve our community. Part of that is going to be a sheriff's substation right there at the Civic Center between the library and the Labor Exchange. Yes, we broke ground a week ago, but in 4 years when that opens, we're going to cut out that response time and we're going to have sheriffs that are stationed right here at the Civic Center. So personally, I look forward to that. I wish we already had it today. But again, yeah, we need increased law enforcement. I don't think anybody can argue with that.
Thank you, Karen. Jim?
I agree. And again, it goes back to enforcing the codes that we currently have in the city. I know that volunteers on parole, I knew I was going to say.
After you get a ticket, we're going to put you on parole.
Patrol.
Is that your proposal?
We're doing our best to rehabilitate everyone here. But they're doing a fantastic job, and I think we can increase that role in our city with volunteers helping to solve these problems. I was speaking to the sheriff, and they said that one of the most common calls they get are people sitting in cars, loitering, that are just hanging out. They come and respond to this. So I think we need more local enforcement so that we can avoid people coming out here, sitting in cars, sleeping overnight. It's not the best situation for our city. It also causes possible break-ins and increases in crime. So I think, yes, law enforcement and also our volunteers can play a big part in helping solve this problem.
Thank you. Lance?
I'll tell you, one of the first things I would do on city council, there's a PCH Public Safety Task Force set of recommendations with about 130 recommendations. I would have a series of public meetings to go through them in a methodical way and to get some sort of direction from the community at large about which of those might be applicable, might be helpful. But this is not an issue which just sprung up out of nowhere. I mean, this has been an issue for a long time. And there are reports that are available for us to look at. I'd want to go through every one of those 130 recommendations with a fine-tooth comb and weed out the ones which aren't practical or which are not amenable to the public at large. And let's start to focus on the ones that are. And once again, enforcement is important. I live down on PCH between Big Rock and Topanga. I got to tell you, folks, it is a speedway. You're either stacked up in the morning or it's pedal to the metal, metal to the pedal, whatever it is. It's going fast. And they come around that corner, and I'm telling you, when I got to pull out of that parking spot, it's quite an act of vehicular jujitsu to get in and out. So I deal with it every single day. We've got to have a public forum to look at the list of options that we can incorporate immediately, and I would support increasing the budget for enforcement as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we started with Olivia, didn't we?
Do you want me to use one of these again?
No. Karen?
Yes.
Where do you stand on the MRCA Charmley Wilderness Park swap for the Bluffs Park?
I'm in favor of the city keeping the bluffs. I'm also in favor 100% of leaving the bluffs untouched. And, you know, the conversation has changed. As I think everybody knows now, the city recently closed escrow on those 3 properties from the Malibu Bay Company. They're all commercially zoned. It's taken the pressure off the bluffs. I'd like to leave it untouched. I reminded myself last night, I read a long article that was written by Suzanne Goldeman. It's full of pictures that she's either taken or researched, and a lot of information there about the loss of habitat that we've seen here. We don't need to touch the bluffs. I don't want to trade back with the MRCA. Charmley makes more sense for them. The bluffs is in the middle of the city. I'd like to see us keep it, and I'd like to see us keep it as it is.
Thank you. Jim?
Yes, you know, the Bluffs property is probably the last natural preserved bluff property that we have in the state. So we need to keep it in its natural state. So I'm not in favor of developing the Bluffs property. And again, because now we have new acquired properties we can use for our community with baseball, soccer, skate parks, other community activities that can be dedicated to those public lands. As far as the MRCA is concerned, this is a big problem. You know, they've come and purchased properties within neighborhoods, using them as access points to the parklands. They don't really have the money to maintain them. This is probably the biggest problem. They've acquired them, but they can't maintain them. So we need to do everything we can. We need to fight with the MRCA, and we need to use every resource we can to stop them from invading our neighborhoods.
Thank you, Jim. Lance?
In my humble estimation and opinion, the last thing in the world we want to do is invite Joe Edmiston down to mess around with the bluffs. So, and I've said it before, leave the bluffs alone. As far as the MRCA is concerned, this is a real challenge to that very intergovernmental function that I was talking about before. It's a state agency. The provocative nature of what he's doing up there in Sycamore Park, it should just raise eyebrows all across the spectrum. We have got to take this fight to Sacramento. We've got to. We can't rely on the legal process and lawsuits, my God, to bankrupt us before we ever get anything there. This is something where we've got to take the new leadership that's coming into the California legislature, particularly the governor's office. I would assume that's going to be Gavin Newsom. And we've got to have our ducks all lined up, go up there, make the case, and say what we need is intergovernmental cooperation, not intergovernmental interference, because that's what's happening. And we all know who's responsible. It's the fellow I mentioned when I first started this little diatribe. So this is going to require a political solution, in my estimation, not a legal one. Thank you.
You're up, Olivia.
There's so many directions that there's so many tangents I could go on with the MRCA, but in regard to bluffs, my goal as a city councilwoman is to keep it out of Joe's hands. Joe has proven himself, and the MRCA has proven themselves to be horrible neighbors. Time after time, they've proven that they can afford to buy the land, but all of a sudden they can't afford to supervise it or maintain it. That's unacceptable. If I buy a piece of property, I'm forced to maintain and supervise it and make sure that it complies with all of the rules and wherever I buy it. The MRCA should be held to the same exact standards. We are in year 3 of the swap. It's a 5-year process. We're in year 3, so there are 2 more years to go. Your guess is as good as mine as, what will happen in the 2 remaining years. But my goal is to keep our Central Park out of Joe's hands. I don't want to have a battle over overnight camping there again. It's our Central Park. It should be kept pristine. Or if the public decides to implement ball fields there, okay. My preference is to keep it rural. But again, it's not just up to me, it's up to you, the voters. Thank you.
Hey, Jim, this is kind of a bonus question.
Okay.
Many people don't know that when the city council tried to say we're not going to do anything with the Bluff Park, Joe said, oh, in that case, the swap is off. That's why we're still talking about it. How would you deal with that situation which currently exists?
Well, it seems to me that that was more of a threat than anything else. I mean, we have a negotiation that is ongoing. We have a goal in the next 2 years to effectively exchange the park at the Bluffs with the Charmley Park property. I don't ever want to see camping and open fires and development on the Bluffs. So I'm going to say that we will follow up with our original plan, and we're going to take Charmley Park and give it to the MRCA, and we're going to take Malibu Bluffs and make it a city property.
Lance?
I just want to, reinforce what I previously said. I believe this is going to take a political resolution, and I think we need to start on that immediately. As soon as we get the new executive installed in Sacramento, we need to be up there knocking on the door, and we need to say, look, we've got a problem between our city and your state agency. We don't have to throw any incriminations around. We'll just keep it generic. This is a problem. It's got to get resolved. And we're going to employ every avenue, every political avenue. We got a great state senator, Henry Stern. We got a very close friend in Ben Allen over in Santa Monica, who has endorsed me, by the way. We got Richard Bloom. And we just need to line up the troops and walk in there and lay the markers down. Because that's probably the most expeditious way to get this done. And it very well may be the only way to get it done.
Thank you. Olivia?
So I'm the only candidate in this race whose neighborhood is currently under siege by the MRCA. I have proven my track record in unifying my own neighborhood in West Winding Way and Murphy Way. I've founded a nonprofit of which I'm the president of, the Santa Monica Mountain Safe Trails Association. We educate visitors and residents about fire safety in our local mountains. I'm ready for anything that the MRCA proposes. Sorry. The reality is that they play hardball. I wouldn't be surprised if Joe would try some kind of blackmail, like you just said, of either build it or I'll take it. If that's the case, I would advise that we discover what exactly development qualifies as and see if we can keep the bluffs the way they are by minimally touching them but still qualifying for development, so that we can maintain ownership of Bluffs Park. As I said, I don't think Joe Edmiston or the MRCA has any place at Bluffs Park. So I think we need to be very strategic about how we handle that.
Thank you. Karen?
Yeah, that is the deal. It was a 5-year swap, and the threat was made that if Malibu didn't act on the bluffs, the trade would go back, and we would have Charmley and the MRCA would have the bluffs. The state. I don't want to see that happen. One more thing about the bluffs. It's an environmentally sensitive habitat area. You all know that term, ESHA. There's also erosion there. The erosion is right above Malibu Road, where some of you live. Where you live. I think we need to get Ted Lieu involved. We need to go to the highest level possible to fight Joe Edmiston. I keep hearing what a powerful man he is. I don't want him to come after me personally, but I'm ready to fight his agency. I've heard stories about misappropriation of funds. I mean, this is not a forthcoming person. This is not a good steward of the land. This is not a good neighbor. He's put us at risk. He's put the public at risk. You know, you all know most of the search and rescue activity that's going on up at the waterfall, what quote unquote waterfall, at the end of Winding Way. That's because of the MRCA. That's people going on Winding Way, using our friends and neighbors' front yards as toilets, taking their dogs up there, walking in the middle of the road. They don't know what they don't know. They heard it was a cool place to go, and they all come. Every weekend, we've got 1,000 cars parking on the highway in the summer, running across the road, going up there. Have any of you shown a house? Have you tried to sell a house on Winding Way? You know what I'm talking about. I feel sorry for anybody up there who wants to sell. Our family has a close friend who's almost at the very end of the road there. So yeah, the MRCA is a serious threat. Joe Edmiston is. I invite everybody to get involved in this. But one more time, we don't want the bluffs touched, and we don't want to trade back.
Thank you. Now, this is a two-part question. Are you in favor of mom and apple pie? And do you favor the correct creation of an independent Malibu school district? What will you do to assist AMPS in their quest to split the Malibu-Santa Monica school district? And we're starting with Lance.
I don't like apple pie,
How about mom?
but I love mom.
Good. Okay. On to the meat and potatoes.
Okay. That was a tough one. Yes, I support an independent school system for us in Malibu here. I have a very good relationship with Ben Allen, who is going to play a key role in how we're moving forward on this. And I just want to make clear one thing on the past question, Karen. Ted Lieu is not the appropriate person to get involved in this because that's a federal, he's a federal elected official, and he also has endorsed my campaign. So we don't want to get him involved in the state issues. That's between the city and the state agency. I will do everything that I can, and I think that school issue, it really is a two-part issue in and of itself. PCB free, absolutely. Absolutely need to protect our students. We need to protect our teachers. Should we have an independent school? Yes. A school system? Yes, I believe we should. I believe that Santa Monica is going to fight like heck on this, and it's going to probably be a long, drawn-out situation, but I'll do everything in my power to try to be as persuasive as I possibly can be with our Santa Monica friends.
Thank you. Olivia?
I'm the only candidate in this race who has 3 children currently in our local Malibu public schools, and they will be for the next 18 years. I think that says everything regarding my motivation, I will do everything in my power within the law to make sure we get our own school district. And a big thank you to Karen for all the work she's done. I owe her a huge debt of gratitude. She was PTA president of when I was at Webster, and she made it a magical experience. So thank you.
Disco
I look
day.
forward to taking the
Disco day.
the debate. That's right, disco day. When I was a kid, when I was growing up, and a lot of your kids maybe remember too, if we wanted to go to a different school, we could. We could go to Calabasas. Some kids went to Viewpoint. Some kids went to Samo High. They had that option. Because of traffic and the condition of our highways now, that's no longer an option. Our schools haven't changed since I was there, which is a long time ago. And I fear that by the time my kids get there, we still won't have a school district. So in the name of property values, in the name of education, and most of all, in the name of keeping Malibu a family town, if we don't incentivize families to live here, we will become another tourist town. Families are the soul. They are the backbone of Malibu. And I would hate to see our school system fail and people not want to go to school in Malibu and everything become either a rental, a hotel, or just a transient city. So thank you.
Thank you. Karen, do you know anything about this question?
I'll try to talk quick because I could literally talk about this for the next several hours. I'm a founding member of AMPS, Advocates for Malibu Public Schools. Before that, I was PTA president of pretty much every school in Malibu and many other positions as well, parliamentarian being my favorite one. I'll tell you something. Despite my mission for the last 10 years to separate the school district, let Santa Monica take care of Santa Monica and Malibu take care of Malibu and have an MUSD, I've been endorsed by the majority of the school board members. I've been endorsed by our school board president, by our school board past president. I'm endorsed by school board members who aren't even running for re-election. So in spite of the fact that I've gotten up and called them out for many years and exhorted other people to get involved in the school district, they respect me. They know how I work. I work fair. I expect everybody to do the best job possible. They have not had Malibu's best interest at heart. You don't have to dig very deep to know that. I'm currently on the Malibu Facilities District Advisory Committee, all right? We meet in Malibu. We only talk about Malibu schools. Why does that committee even exist? Because of AMPS. We worked for many years to get away from having a Santa Monica Malibu Facilities District Advisory Committee. What happens then? All the meetings are in Santa Monica. The majority of the agenda items are about Santa Monica. And Malibu, once again, as it's always been, is a dangling appendage to somebody else's school district. And if you can tell this makes my blood boil, it really does. We're not finished. We're going to keep working on it. The other committee that I'm on is the Measure M committee, the school bond. And if you don't know anything about it, I don't have time right now. I would love to talk to you about it for as long as you'll give me. This is the first time ever that Malibu has had its own school bond on the ballot. Santa Monica has its own bond on their ballot. They are separate. Santa Monica can't touch our money, but it's an all or nothing deal. In the past, with Santa Monica having 84% of the votes, they could carry us on a bond. This is an all or nothing deal. This bond needs to pass, but it's Malibu only. So remember that. You've got to vote yes on it. The money all stays here.
Thank you, Karen. Jim?
I agree that Malibu must have its own school district. Like I said, I've been involved with the schools since my son was in kindergarten. I think that they've done a great job, but now what we have is an opportunity to make them great. With our own school district, we can now take control. We can implement amazing programs where this will incentivize students to come to our schools because we'll be offering world-class education. So I agree that we do need a Malibu school district. It's going to happen. I know that it's been a long road, and I compliment everyone in their hard efforts to make this happen. So yes, I know that we will have this soon, and I want to encourage everybody to vote for the bond measure to support our schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. We have a choice. We can either do the 2 minutes apiece and let you guys go home, or we can take some questions from the audience.
Yeah, let's take some questions.
Does anybody out there have a question? I have a question right here in the front row.
Oh wait, before you get, we're recording this, so it needs to.
I can go stand next to her.
People watching this at home will be able to hear your question.
Great.
Meryl and I recently went to the meeting on Las Virgenes about the murders in the canyon. Very distressing situation. And they did mention that with all the visitors that come to Malibu, that crime is on the increase. So with the visitors that come to Malibu, I'm just thinking they can't actually spend a lot of money in Malibu. They probably get their gas elsewhere. I'm not sure how much food they get. Are the visitors spending money here, and is there a way, and I'd love for each of you to answer this, is there a way to get revenue from the surrounding areas because their residents are coming to use Malibu and we're paying for the safety on PCH in large part, and for the new crime wave when we see people coming in from, I think, Oxnard and areas and increased crime on Point Dume. All that's costing us a fortune, and we're talking about paying the sheriff's department. How can we get money from other agencies, whoever they are, to support these expenses?
Okay, I think it's Olivia's turn to be the first to answer. Lucky you.
Thank you for that wonderful question. I think it is a theme that we've seen throughout Malibu politics since the beginning of time. You see the sewer ban or the septic ban in the Civic Center area. The state's basically made Malibu responsible for any pollution that exits Malibu Lagoon, whether or not it's ours. So that's something that enraged me. I fully understand where you're coming from. I agree with you. I think we do need to work with our surrounding cities because we already do work with them in many ways to make possible things we otherwise could not afford, such as insurance. We have a joint use agreement with Agora and with Calabasas so that we can even have insurance. There's no reason we can't couple with them. I think part of the reason we have trouble is because there's a narrative that no matter what happens in Malibu, everyone's okay because they live in Malibu. Oh, those Malibu people, they're fine. Oh, there are murders in the canyon, they're fine. Oh, well, welcome to the rest of the world. And it's not okay. And it's time to have a city council who really stands up and says that. And says, this is what we need, and this is what we're going to fight to get. Surrounding neighborhoods or surrounding cities, we need to have a greater presence at the COG meetings, which are the Council of Governance meetings, which I have attended. But I never hear this brought up. And I think that a dialogue absolutely needs to begin. We need to be creative about how we incentivize that. In terms of what people are spending in Malibu, you're right, they're going to the beach. They're going to the beach, and maybe they're going to Ralph's. And you're right, maybe they're not even getting gas. The vast majority, I don't think, can probably afford to shop and buy a $100 t-shirt in Malibu. So, yes, I agree. Yes, we need to partner. We're a contract city as it is. We can't afford to do much for things in our purview. So, yes, building relationships with outside cities is incredibly important.
Karen, you're on.
We had a forum a couple of nights ago that was put on by the Malibu Chamber of Commerce. And one thing that I would say is that I'd like to see the city have a stronger relationship with the chamber. We don't have a business license. We don't have an inventory of businesses in Malibu. We do have a lot of empty retail space. We can all see that. I've had some long conversations with Tony Dorn about that. But yeah, we have people, how many cities of maybe 13,000, which is what the sign says, but we all believe it's less, somehow accommodate between 10 and 15 million visitors a year. It's a dramatic impact. How do we make money off them? I believe they do spend money here. But how much money can you spend going to the beach? So Susan, I don't know if I have an answer for you, but I would like to see a stronger partnership between the city, the Chamber of Commerce, and the local businesses.
Hey, Karen, Jim?
Yes, that's an excellent question, Susan, and I wish I had an easy answer. I think the best thing for us to do is to reach out to the other cities, propose this idea to them, and see if we can work something out so that we could generate some revenue from all of the tourists that come here. We don't account for revenue from tourists. The Malibu city doesn't even issue a business license. You can operate a business with an alarm permit here in the city. So we need more cooperation from the city with our small businesses, that's for sure. I'm a small business owner. I know what it's like dealing with the city. I've had 3 businesses. All of them were successful until my rents were increased to such a level where I couldn't afford to operate anymore, and I had to close the business. I think this is a big problem that we have here with promoting local businesses, but having rents that are so exorbitant that no one could possibly run a business here. So I think that's a great idea to reach out to the other communities and see if we can find some mutual cooperation. Thank you.
Lance?
You know, for one iteration of my vast backlog of experiences was I was Assistant Executive Director of the United States Conference of Mayors for 6 years. And even though we represented cities with populations 30,000 and above, we also had a special committee that dealt with cities, particularly cities along coastlines, that had less than 30,000 people as a population, but had a burgeoning population in the summer months or in the in the vacation time periods. And I think what we could possibly do would be to partner up with the U.S. Conference of Mayors, attend their gatherings with other communities that are in the same, maybe not the exact same, but at least, relatively the same situation that we are, that are having to deal with huge expanses of population during certain months out of the year. There are a lot of communities around the country which experience this. So what we should do is we should get involved, and I would most certainly put forth that we become a member, this city become a member of that organization, so we can sit and discuss with other cities that have these problems of what they're doing. And I just want to also go back to the first part of your question. I was out there at the Gillette Ranch. It was probably about a month and a half ago now. I was absolutely floored that we had all these agencies represented talking about how their great achievement is that they talk to one another. And I was on TV that evening on Channel 11 saying, we need results. I'm glad that they're all working together, but we need results.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from the audience? I see one in the far corner. And then followed by Pam Woodham.
This is for Lance. I just kind of wanted to make a comment because I was really involved with the PCB thing that happened in the schools. And you are friends with Ben Allen, and Ben Allen was absolutely not helpful at all in any way at that time. So I just wanted to let you know.
No, I appreciate that. Ben and I are good friends, but we may have differences on certain things. I certainly would have absolutely no reluctance whatsoever to go toe-to-toe with him on an issue where we disagree. So I'm not saying he's perfect, but he is somewhat reasonable. Now, maybe he's not reasonable on this issue, but that won't prevent me from going toe-to-toe with him.
Well, I hope you would, because
I will.
we really tried to talk to him, and he would be like, yes, we'll have a meeting, and he canceled every meeting. He was really difficult.
Well,
and-
you just gotta let me at him.
Oof. Okay.
Karen, I think you're chomping at the bit on this one.
Trying to not get upset talking about the school district and the way they handled the PCBs. So when those PCBs were discovered, it was a memo written by Seth Jacobson. If any of you know, Seth Jacobson, Craig Foster, and I ran for school board in 2012. We didn't expect to be elected, especially 3 people from Malibu. We basically did it as a coming out party to say we want our own school district. So the district's response to that was to hire a Pillsbury law firm, downtown LA. Pillsbury was paid $6 million. Other consultants were paid in the area of another $6 million. The school district spent $12 million from the general fund of SMMUSD to fight dealing with the PCBs on campus, which is absolutely shameful. This should be national news, okay? It would have cost them about $2 million to remediate the problem, but their tactics were to blame and deny. So all that money was wasted. When you hear about school funding shortages, that's one area that it went to. Now that the bond money is in action, 2 bonds that were passed in 2006 and 2012, we've got some movement there. But I'll tell you, this is a group of people that do not have our best interest at heart. They circled the wagons, and all they did was acted to protect their own agency, not the students, not the teachers, not the other school employees. So if anybody else wants to get involved and help us get to the finish line on getting our own school district, please come talk to me at the end of the night.
Olivia, I skipped over you.
You did?
Yes.
What is, I'm sorry.
Did you want to comment on
Ben
her
Allen?
question? Yes.
I hope we're not going to be having to deal with Santa Monica School District any longer, so hopefully that won't be an issue, but I know you know me, and I have no problem with confronting Ben or anybody else about anything to preserve the quality of life and advocate the rights of Malibu residents.
Jim, do you have any comment you'd like to make on this?
Well, yes, the first thing is that our concern should be for our children, obviously, for the residents of Malibu, and their health and safety. And this PCB problem has been ignored. It's shameful, and it should be resolved. And anyone that has not cooperated should be held accountable. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to call on Pam Whittam here, and I'm going to borrow your mic here, if I could figure out how to get it out. There it is. Can you pass that back to her?
Okay, this is a short one. Everyone here has seemed to say that you want the citizens in Malibu to be involved. But we can see from all of the meetings that you have that there's lots and lots of our citizens who don't come, don't want to come, but they do have ideas and they would like to express them. And one of you said, why not have some online and hard copy surveys? Any comments? I said that.
Well, when they get a mic, you can talk about it. Sorry. Here, you handle it because I'm going to do something wrong.
Thanks, Pam. Look, this is democracy. So everybody has a voice. I would hope more people would choose to use that voice. Obviously, I hope everybody votes on November 6th. But yeah, the city has a communications department. I think Matt Meyerhoff has been doing a good job. But, you know, information needs to go both ways. Please, when we get to that point of talking about, and it's coming up very soon, especially about how to use those 3 new properties that the city has just closed escrow on, by all means, I would like to see town hall meetings the same way that we've had with AMPS for several years. I don't know if I said I'm a past AMPS president. I've put those meetings together. But we need information from all of you. Please don't hesitate. Go online when there's a link you can click and fill that out. Fill out a hard copy survey if you don't want to go online. Come to the meetings. Come to city council meetings. Go to the Parks and Recs Commission meetings. Go to the Planning Commission meetings. I mean, those are there for us. I think those people get discouraged when they do their work in good faith and people don't show up. I know what it's like. I was on a previous district advisory committee, and I'll tell you, we all went. Everybody was tired. It was in the evening. The meetings were long. And at the end, you feel like you fill out your report, and somebody goes, oh, thank you, you know, and it disappears. So, yeah, Pam, please, I know you want to be involved. I'm sure everybody who's here wants to be involved. You've taken the time to do it tonight. Please get involved with the city. Give your ideas. You know, everybody sees the city from a different place, from different needs, different experiences. It's not up to any of us personally. It's not up to Lou. We want to hear from the city. I hope to work as a representative. I have my own ideas. I know what my own family's needs have been, what mine are now. But yeah, I want to represent. I don't want to be a feudal lord.
I've lost control of who's next, so if you want to be next, you're it.
That's an excellent idea, and I've also expressed that we need more communication between the city and the residents. You know, I know when I'm doing business transactions, I always get an online survey right afterwards, whether it's service or purchase. And I think the city can do something like that as well, so we can really get real-time information. We can get data that we can use to make decisions with. We are going to be having a lot of public forums on the new properties that we've just acquired. And I know from chairing the Public Works Commissions that we have public comments, which are always well received. However, I do see sometimes when the staff prepares reports that are presented and then thrown into the trash at the end of the night, which makes me very upset. So I know that we can work together with the city and the community to really join forces and have our voices heard. Thank you.
Lance?
In 1993, I was asked to set up the first Office of Sustainable Development in the federal government. Now, there had been sustainable development offices and agencies all around the world, but there had never been one in this country, an Office of Sustainable Development at the federal level. And one of the things that we did as an office after we got set up was go to different communities around the country and establish visioning exercises in those communities. Most particularly and most successful was in Seattle. We also did Portland. We also did Monterey Bay. And what we did essentially was this. We organized stakeholders throughout the community. Every stakeholder group that you could organize, and had them sit and derive at a consensus on what it is that makes the community a viable community, quality of life, a sustainable community. And these include environmental indicators, economic indicators, social justice indicators, whatever it is your community feels is important. And the importance of coming up with these indicators is that they're all measurable. And so at the end of the year, you have a report card on what policies that have been passed by your local government are doing to achieve that quality of life. If you got the arrows of sustainability going up because all of these indicators are measurable, then your city's doing a good job. If they're going down, they're not doing a good job. So it gives you a way to track the policies that are being passed as to whether they service the needs of the community as determined by the stakeholders in the community. We ought to do that here in Malibu. I've talked to the sustainability director here in the city. He's 100% for it.
Thank you. Olivia?
Even after a decade of covering Malibu city politics and planning commission and everything else, Malibu schools, I took on this new adventure and this new challenge of founding this nonprofit to educate our community about fire safety in our local mountains. And the reason that the nonprofit was born was because we know that we're gearing up for a fight with the MRCA. So one of my challenges was, how do I let people know this is even happening? How do I disseminate this information? Who do I go to? Am I supposed to knock door to door? People don't know. And the one thing I learned is that, unlike other neighborhoods, the HOAs in Malibu, in our different enclaves, do very different things. Some of them only fix roads. Some of them have monthly meetings. Some of them do nothing. Some of them have no idea who their HOA president is. My opinion is that neighborhoods need to be better organized. I remember I tried to lead a fire drill in my own neighborhood, and it was, no pun intended, it was kind of a disaster. Because it's difficult to mobilize people. But if we can have Susan or somebody at the city, Susan Duenas is the public information officer, if we can have, or Matt Meyerhoff, who's supposed to be in charge, he took over my job when I left the city, I was the media information officer. If we can work more closely with HOA presidents or HOA neighborhoods in general and have direct tentacles out to them and make these HOA presidents ambassadors of their neighborhoods, we have more direct lines to be able to reach them and tell them what's going on. And they can then tell their own little jurisdictions. So I think it's a strategic move. It's not something that's going to happen overnight. But I think that we are in an age where we really need to band together as a city and protect, all of these aspects of our quality of life. And I'd like to see the HOAs have more of a presence in educating their neighborhoods about what's going on. Just an added layer.
Are we back to a new question? Yes.
Speaking about fire, the Southern Cal Edison has recently said that in the event of high winds, they're going to close down the power in Malibu. It would be interesting to hear what all of your positions are on that and how you plan to work with Southern Cal Edison.
Whose turn is it to start? That's right, I'm the one that's responsible. So I think Jim, you started the last one, didn't you? Yeah, Jim?
Yes. Yes, Ellen, this is going to be a big fight. When I first heard about the fact that Edison plans on cutting power to our community during times of natural disasters, it just didn't make sense. I mean, by cutting power during a disaster, we're basically cutting off all of our communications. We can't communicate with the fire department. I mean, the signals and the traffic is not going to be able to work. Our Malibu emergency room will not be able to function. They've said, well, maybe you could put some generators in or something like that. Well, it turns out that the city has a very complicated and expensive process just to put a generator in your house. So this is something we need to stop immediately from happening. Whatever I can do, I will, to prevent Edison from turning off the power. This is a bad idea, and it's only going to cause disaster. And there's no amount of money that can be put on loss of life. Thank you.
Lance?
There can't possibly be anyone who's going to sit up on this end of the table and say this is a good idea. And there's an upcoming meeting, I think it's in a week or two, where
Have
I'm
the
sure
date if you want it.
I'm sure it's going to get very vocal. I'm certainly intending on being there. I'm sure everybody else at this table is going to be there as well. It makes so little sense. It would be laughable if it wasn't potentially so tragic. I think so. I don't even want to spend any time talking about that decision. I think it's just flat out wrong, and I would imagine it's being done for purposes of avoiding liability. And that should not be the basis upon which any organization makes decisions which affect the common good, which affect, potentially loss of life. So, so that's a non-starter, and I think we're all going to fight like hell to make sure that some sanity be put back into this decision-making process. I think there's another thing that the city needs to do, because I've sat in meetings, particularly the Business Roundtable, where we've discussed this issue. I think we need to have a readable, comprehensive but readable and understandable document which tells us exactly what to do when the fire is coming down the hill. And whether that is something as simple as flee to the sea, I don't know, maybe that's what we should do. I'm not an expert on this. I would think it's probably a pretty good idea to get down to the ocean. But if there are other areas in the city, whether it's the Pepperdine property where you should congregate, we ought to have this available on everybody's refrigerator, so they know exactly what to do, 1, 2, 3, so they can get out of there quickly.
Thank you. Olivia?
I wish I could say that I, as one person, will fight like hell and prevail, but that would be a lie. I will do everything I can within the power of the law to defend us against any of this happening with Edison. In the immediate terms, though, what we can do and what I've taken it upon myself to do when I heard this news is I got to know all my neighbors. I got to know how old they are, what they need. Do they need pets? Are they disabled? what is it that they need in their day-to-day lives that will be threatened during an emergency with no power? That way, God forbid we have an emergency, you know, oh, somebody better go check on so-and-so. Maybe you're that point person. Organization should never be underestimated. Edison throwing this power off into the mix means that we have to be more coordinated and ready to act if something goes wrong and our lifelines are shut off. The other thing I've looked at doing is putting sprinkler systems in the eaves of my roof. A lot of the research I've done shows that that's incredibly helpful, and it's something that can be quickly turned on. Well, if we have no power, maybe not. But if there is a red flag day or a red flag warning, or you see that's going on, then those can be turned on in advance. But really getting to know your neighbors, I think, is a very it's an underestimated tool, and it takes time, and it may seem like it's archaic, but you'd be amazed at how many people have no idea who lives down the street from them or even next door. So that would be my advice to you and your neighborhood. It's proven to be an amazing tool that I've utilized.
Karen?
So, thanks, Ellen. If anybody wants to get out, if this is how you keep your calendar, it's how I do, I'll give you the date of the SoCal Edison meeting. It is Tuesday, October 9th at King Gillette Ranch. It starts at 6 p.m., so the same location where the sheriffs had their meeting about the murders. I'll say this about SoCal Edison. SoCal Edison, this is an attempt to shirk liability, to shirk responsibility, and they're cloaking this attempt to cover their own assets in public safety. So it's a ruse, and don't go for it, okay? Edison is a hugely profitable public utility. I think after the Carr fire and the Santa Rosa fire, they took a look at the liability, and now they're trying to pass it off to us as public safety. So there's a few things you need to know. The power poles, the insulators, the lines, they're not maintained. Okay, we're all at risk just from that. And there have been fires in Malibu that required a huge response from the fire department just from lack of maintenance on an insulator. That's not acceptable. We pay for that, all right? The old estimate was high wind advisory. They could shut off the power. That meant 80 to 90 miles per hour. Now they're saying they want to do that at 40 to 50 miles per hour. We're going the wrong direction with Edison, okay? Could I just see a show of hands? How many people were here in 93? Okay, pretty much everybody. And I'm getting chills talking about that, all right? I lived in La Costa. That front row of houses where I lived was saved, thank God, for the fire department. Everybody behind me went down to the ground, 268 homes. You all know that, and you know what people had to go through to rebuild or just give up, okay? Edison's talking about turning off the power 2 to 10 times per year in Malibu. What won't we have? We won't have communication. We won't have signals working on the highway. We won't be able to get a hold of each other. I mean, what do we do? Buy megaphones? No. So please go to that Edison meeting on the 9th. And yeah, this needs to be taken to the highest level. This is, again, this is an agency just like the school district acting in its own interest and trying to convince us that it's in our interest.
Okay, are there any other hands? Michael?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
So Prop 10 is on the ballot, which potentially could give you more ability to do rent control. All of you seem to indicate you are in favor of rent control. Would you actively pursue it, and how would you pursue it if you did?
Sorry.
It's Lance's turn, but Lance doesn't have a mic.
Oh, here you go, Lance.
Oh, very good.
I really don't, I haven't paid any attention to it, and so I don't know how much I would actually pursue it, but if it's in keeping with, you know, the general consensus that we've all agreed upon up here, I would support it, but I don't know, you know, what it is I would, you know, essentially do to help promote it.
Okay. Olivia?
Sorry, Michael. So is your question, would we
Actively pursue rent control? Because all of you seem to have some.
No, I wouldn't. I think it's important to listen to the residents, obviously citywide, but it's important to see, to look at the numbers, see where things are going, see where they were, where they started, where they're going. I think demographic plays a huge part in it. So no, I would not pull the trigger to enact rent control right away. I think there's a lot of research that needs to be done. There are numbers that need to be paid attention to. I'm not sure if this proposition that you mentioned has a time limit as to when those funds can be spent. And I think that's another thing that needs to be. Do you know if there's a time limit? Yeah. So
It
these are all.
cancels the Costa-Hawkins Act. Yeah.
So my answer is no, I would not enact it right away. I'd like to have it as an option to serve our residents who need it in those areas, especially in Point Dume Mobile Home Park and the Point Dume Club. So no, I wouldn't do anything right away. I think I'd need to do a lot of research. You and I can talk about that further if this question makes you uncomfortable. But there's a lack of information as to how we'd use it, when we'd use it. So, but no, I wouldn't pull the trigger right away.
Karen?
I will be the first to say, I don't know a ton about Prop 10. My understanding is that it doesn't apply to the city. It applies to unincorporated areas. I'm for the underdog. That's just my personality. But I will say, my husband and I are about to put a house on the rental market in about a month. So, you know, most of us here in this room are property owners, and maybe some are even investment owners. I don't think Prop 10 applies to the city property, so I don't know if there'd be a situation where we, as city council people, would be promoting it.
Okay. Jim?
The rent control issue is important for stabilization of our community. I know involved in commercial properties that I have been subject to cost of living increases, which are written into just about every commercial lease. I know that rent control or rent stabilization incorporates small increases, and I'm all in favor of that. I just don't want to see landlords taking advantage of opportunities to raise rents and to disrupt our communities. So yes, I would be in favor of some sort of rent control that we can monitor and effectively maintain a stabilized community.
Good. Well, we have about enough time left for each of you to get a 2-minute chance to tell. Yes, that's what they're called, closing statements. Let's have closing statements. It's so hard to come up with these words. So, and once again, I've lost track, but I think Lance was the first one on that one, which means this is Olivia's. She starts with closing statement.
Thank you again. Well, I guess I'll stand up for the closing. Start a trend.
Good.
Thank you all for this opportunity to speak. Thank you to the Board of Realtors for hosting this this wonderful forum. Since I was a teenager, I've been involved in bettering Malibu. This might sound juvenile, but I was voted mayor for a day when I was a freshman at Malibu High School. And this was my first introduction into Malibu politics. And I went in and I looked at the departments and I talked to the department heads. I ran a city council meeting. That's how I met a lot of the people who are, a lot of the former mayors, all 8 of them who are supporting me this election. And I was enthralled by the idea and just in love with the idea that, oh my goodness, this community that I love so much, I can actually impact. I can actually do things that will help my community and I'll see a tangible change. So for me, this process is very gratifying. My husband, he thinks I'm nuts for running for city council. But I love this. This is my home. I've known no other home. My parents live in the same house on the land side of Malibu Road. So they've seen big changes. And I look forward to working together with you, working together with outside agencies to really preserve this, our way of life. Like I said, I'm the only candidate with 3 kids in our school systems. I do believe that families are the backbone of our city. I have the experience, I have the passion, I have the energy, and I have the motivation. I do. It's always been my dream to raise my family in Malibu and give them the most amazing childhood just like I had, and I see that under threat. I do. I do see our way of life and our quality of life being threatened. I have all the motivation in the world to defend it. I'm smart, I'm capable, I've put in the time, I know the issues, and I'm ready to hit the ground running. So I hope to earn your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Karen?
Now that we're standing. First of all, thanks to the MAR. Thank you, Paul. Great job. I really appreciate everybody making the time to be here tonight. A lot of you have known for many years. In many cases, I know your kids. Our kids are friends. We're neighbors. If you know anything about me, you know that I work my butt off. It's just simple as that. I care about this community. I've been giving back for almost 30 years. I ended up getting involved when my daughter started kindergarten, and I had just stopped working for pay. I've been working ever since for free. I find it very satisfying. I give my husband credit for putting food on the table that I'm able to do this. Not everybody gets the chance to do this kind of thing. I love working with my community. I love Malibu. I can't see living anywhere else. I find a huge amount of satisfaction in giving back. It's the kind of family that I was raised in. And I've cut my teeth in a very hard way for the last decade with the school district and learning about local control and what happens when you're passive and you are working against an organization. And in our case with the city, many agencies, many organizations at many levels. It takes work. It takes getting involved. I like doing it. I would like to do that for you. I'd like to be your representative, and I'd like to help lead the city through the next chapter. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Karen.
Thank you very much for coming tonight. We appreciate everybody's attention. After the last election, I was asked to become a Public Works Commissioner. I was appointed by Rick Mullen at the time. Over the last few years, I've been working with the Public Works Commission, the staff, and the City Council. I've learned how the city works. I think I've gained valuable experience. In my day job, I'm an accountant. I work in budgeting and auditing. I understand the necessary financial operations of the city as well. I would like to see all budgets being focused towards the benefit of our residents first and foremost, and all the money that we spend for the community being focused on our best interests. I also want to say that I have the endorsement currently of the majority of the Malibu City Council, Mayor Mullen, Skylar Peak, and Jefferson Wagner. So I believe that I will be able to serve everyone's interest well and take Malibu forward into the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Diane?
Thanks so much for putting this together. Thanks so much for coming out here tonight. It's been a real eye-opener for me. I haven't been in the community that long, but this is my community. I turned 65 a couple of weeks ago, and I've worked for a lot of elected officials. I've had a really, a kick of a career, but I've never been on this side, the elected side. I've always worked for elected officials. I've never gotten myself elected. And we've got to restore confidence in our government, period, at any level. We've got to have the integrity, we've got to have the experience, and we've got to be able to trust those that we elect to do what's good for us, for all of us. So the one thing you're going to get from me, you're always going to get straight talk. I'm not beholden to any interests whatsoever. I don't need to do this. I want to do this. And it's important. And government can work. Sometimes it doesn't work, but it can. And when it works, it can do great things. And that's why I'm running for city council. And I would very much appreciate you taking the time to look on my website, see what I stand for, see what I've done, if that makes a difference. But it's not really what I've done as much as what I want to do. And I put across some forward-thinking, forward-looking proposals about what I would do if elected to city council. Thank you so much for your vote.
I want to thank everybody for showing up here. Can we give them another hand? And I want to thank all you people for showing up, but as they used to say at the Malibu Inn, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. So, thank you very much.